Welcome back to Squawk Box. The price of Bitcoin crossing back over the $48,000 level over the weekend, 1 month this after the launch of the spot Bitcoin ETF. This morning, trading slightly lower. Joining us right now is Anthony Pompliano, founder of Pomp Investments. Good morning to you.
Morning.
This has been a bit of a wild ride because we talked about sort of selling the news or selling the rumor, buying the rumor, selling the news. But now we've come back to buying.
Yeah. I mean, look, the verdict's in, right? Wall Street doesn't just like Bitcoin, they love Bitcoin. If you think of these assets, there's been over 5,500 ETF launches in history. Never have we had a fund get to $3 billion in AUM in the first 30 days. BlackRock and Fidelity both just did it. So two for the first time in history. And then if you look at Bitwise and 21 Shares, ARK, they're both going to hit $1 billion this year or this week. And so now you have four funds that are going to hit $1 billion of inflows. But the most interesting part of this is the inflows. I mean, these funds are doing $500 million a day of net inflows, but there's only 900 Bitcoin that is actually coming into the daily incoming supply. And so when you look at that, that's like $40 to $45 million. There's 12.5x more demand for Bitcoin than what's being produced on a daily basis.
So how much of this do you think is being generated by the ETFs themselves?
Well, I mean, you just measure the actual net inflows, right? And so you can just see there is way more buying pressure.
So you're saying $3 billion for BlackRock.
There's $4 billion now for BlackRock, 3.5 for Fidelity, and then you've got Bitwise and 21 Shares will both hit about $1 billion this upcoming week.
Total valuation, though, of Bitcoin, if
$1 trillion.
The market cap is $1 trillion. So isn't this a de minimis issue or no?
Now here's where it gets really interesting.
Most of these things aren't trading.
80%
right.
of all Bitcoin in circulation has not moved in the last 6 months. You have only about $200 billion is actually tradable. And so that means that these ETFs sucked up 5% of the entire tradable supply of Bitcoin in 30 days. I mean, Bitcoin has become Wall Street's favorite asset.
What were you going to say, Joe? I can tell you.
I'm not going to say. 5% doesn't sound like a lot. Here's what
in
I'm
30
thinking.
days?
It used to take a lot for someone to invest in Bitcoin.
Yes.
It's real easy right now. And I don't know. Are we going to 90,000 in a year? That'd be too weird. People don't double their money by buying an ETF in a year. So I think it might be a currency that you can use because it's going to stay at 47,000.
Well, look, the world is changing for sure. I mean, last year, the NASDAQ was up 50%, right? And so there's definitely these big moves that happen in the traditional markets. Bitcoin, obviously, is that on steroids. But the other thing that's now starting to happen, Fidelity just came out, and they've got a fund. It's an all-in-one fund out in Canada. And they're going to put 1 to 3% of that fund into the Bitcoin ETF. And so what you're going to start seeing is not just direct inflows into the Bitcoin ETFs. You're going to start seeing them putting Bitcoin into all of their funds because it, from a risk-reward standpoint, drastically improves the performance of these portfolios. And they're going to start to realize if I'm lagging indicators, if I'm lagging performance, if I put a little bit of Bitcoin, 1 to 3% into this portfolio, it's going to enhance my returns.
Bitcoin, I think it might be good if it stayed at 47,000 for a year because then people wouldn't worry about buying a pizza that's worth a Mercedes 2 years from now.
The joke in the Bitcoin community is the real Bitcoiners want the price to stay low so they can accumulate more of it, right? But obviously, when you have this much demand, the price got to go up.
A year from now, it's where? It's
much higher. I think that if this continues, if we have 12.5 times more demand than we do incoming daily supply, and remember the halving is coming, so we're going to go from 900 Bitcoin to 450 Bitcoin a day. I mean, this thing's going back to its all-time high. It's pretty much guaranteed at this point.
What's that other thing called, Becky? Whenever we talk about the halving, where we all go up to heaven and something. Someone's left behind.
The rapture?
The rapture. The halving is like the rapture to you really hardcore.
Let me ask you this. You're a bull. You're an owner. What's the thing you worry about being wrong about?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is it's not so much right or wrong as much as it is like the return of this asset is going to dampen over time just as it gets larger and as the holder base changes. One of the things that hasn't happened in the Bitcoin community previously is things like rebalancing. And so when you all of a sudden give financial advisors an asset, and let's say you have a 1% allocation and it goes to 5%, you're going to sell. You're going to rebalance that portfolio. And so when the holder base is changing, you have to understand that the return profile will come down. And so if you think that you're going to buy Bitcoin and it's going to help you retire, those days probably are behind. But what it will do is outperform stock.
But then you're not in the camp of the Cathie Woods $500,000 million base case Bitcoin valuation issue. Because, by the way, if that's true, then you can retire.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, it depends on the timeline, right? So if you're saying it's going to go from 50,000 to 500,000, which is 10x, and that's going to happen over the next 10 years.
Yeah, I think she thinks that that's what's going to happen.
That's not that crazy, right? I mean, again, NASDAQ was up 50% last year. I'm not saying NASDAQ's going to go up 50% every year, but we live in a world where it has completely lost all ties to reality because we are printing an enormous amount of money. The interest payment on the debt is $1 trillion, right? It was a video game number. And so in that world, how much are these assets worth when the denominator is just being debased away? They're going to be worth a lot more. You can just start putting zeros on the end of the values of these assets.
Anthony Pompliano. Pomp, thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.